I became interested in this field of immigration policy and immigration in the labor market, sort of by backing into it. When I finished my graduate degrees in 1964, my studies and my formal degree in 1965, Ph.D. degree, studying labor economics at that time, immigration was a minor issue in the development of labor for the contemporary labor market. Immigration had been declining in absolute numbers since the 1930s, and in percentage terms, really since around 1910. It's been becoming less and less important. The 1965, 96% of the American labor force, of our population was native-born. Immigration had been declining. Its seeming was insignificant. So when I went to teach at the University of Texas, I was not really prepared for what I soon encountered. That was the whole subject of immigration. When I started teaching there in 1964, some of my students began to ask questions about why I didn't talk more about what was going on in Texas, as opposed to my interest in national issues, broad labor market issues, which really had nothing to say really about immigration. But at the time, they encouraged me to get interested in the border and special issues in Texas, especially the Chicano students. And by coincidence, Cesar Chavez came to the University of Texas. It was either late December or I believe early January of 1966, late December 1965 or say early 1966, as a part of his efforts to organize farm workers in South Texas. He had previously been at a more successful effort out in California, and he was seeking to replicate that effort in South Texas. So I met with him after his address to the student body about this efforts to organize farm workers in Texas, about what was special and unique about Texas as opposed to California. And at the time I mentioned to him Texas was going to be much more difficult to organize because unions were much more controversial in Texas than was the case in California. And Texas had at the time very stringent anti-labor laws, limiting picketing, the number of pickets you could have at a work site, at a portal, what they could do, what activities they could involve in. Texas was a right-to-work state. Texas had no minimum wage law, exact opposite of everything California had. And so it was going to be a much tougher job. But in the process of his organization efforts, I became involved as the Farm Workers Assistance Committee. I was a faculty advisor there that spring, which was a matter of trying to gather food or funds in some sense, take them down to the picketers down in South Texas as he began his organization drive began. And part of that was my turn once was to drive down there and spend the weekend down there on the picket lines and see firsthand who the picketers were and what their work sites were and what have you. Once I got down there, of course, I saw immediately what I had never seen before, an available supply of strike breakers, who this time were basically border commuters, who legally have the right to come across the border, but it is against the law for green card workers to serve as strike breakers. Yet these picket sites, I actually saw the buses pick up the green carders at 5:45 a.m. on the morning of each morning, carry them right to the strike site, and drive right through the work site, right through the picket lines, right into the fields. And as it immediately dawned on me, this strike is doomed. There's no way we're ever going to get these people either back to work or ever improve their working conditions, and absolutely no chance they're ever going to be able to get a union organized in this context where lawyers have unlimited access to strike breakers. And this was the first introduction to the idea that if you're going to be interested in the issues of low income, of poverty, of inequality, in this case, especially of Chicano workers in general in this area, you're going to have to incorporate immigration into your immigration policy, which had such a big influence. Again, at the time, these were border commuters in the early 1960s, a very issue which very little discussion takes place today, but it was the same issue. People living in Mexico, but were working in the United States and were illegally coming into the United States, although it's very questionable, as many people have pointed out, if you're a permanent resident of the United States, you're supposed to be living in the United States. But as the Supreme Court has ruled, it's amiable fiction. Everybody knows this is a joke. Border commuters are living in Mexico, they're working in the United States. But this gives them, of course, an income advantage. Those people who work in the United States and pay prices and living standards of Mexico, but are able to earn money in the United States, have an advantage over workers in the United States who have to live in the United States and pay their taxes and their prices and all the rest of it. And it was an unfair advantage. This was the first introduction. And as again, this expanded that interest into a broader interest in the whole problems of South Texas. And that eventually led me into the study of illegal immigration, in addition to border commuters. The illegal immigration then takes you into legal immigration issues and how they impinge these regions. And before long, you're getting to refugees and asylum issues and all the rest of it. So that was basically the introduction. Cesar Chavez saw from the beginning that illegal immigration was a source of strikebreakers, and there was no way that he was able to organize his union ever effectively as long as employers had access to unlimited numbers of strikebreakers, albeit illegal for them to be there. In fact, we were 1,600 miles from Washington, and no one from Washington was there enforcing the laws, and the Texas Rangers weren't going to enforce the laws, the federal laws anyhow. So Chavez always was concerned about the fact that in fact, he prodded and pushed the Carter administration in later years to enforce their immigration laws, and as a way of trying to get his efforts to organize farm workers in South Texas and California, Arizona, all across that line. That immigration was giving again a alternative source of labor, workers to employers, to made it more difficult for him to organize, get people into unions, to ever have any effective way of raising wages or improving job opportunities or even the community standards, which is what he was even more interested in doing.